Welcome to my algebra class. We're on chapter 11, section 8, and we're going to be adding and subtracting radicals. The steps are: be sure your radical is simplified, and then use your distributive property and take out the common radical and then add. So in this first example, 2 radical 5 plus 3 radical 5, I could take the 2 plus 3, which is 5, and get 5 radical 5. So it's kind of like adding like terms. I took the 2 plus 3 out and times it by radical 5. So you don't have to show this step here. If they both have the same radical, you can add the integers that are in front. And example B, I have 2 of them that have the same radical, so I can add those together and get 8 radical 7. But the minus 2 radical 11, there's nothing I can do with that, so that's my answer. And the last problem, radical 2, radical 7 are all in simplest radical form. However, radical 8 is 4 times 2, so I could take the square root of 4, which is 2, so that'll come out 4 radical 2. And 63 is 9 times 7, so I could take the square root of 9, which is 3, and get negative 6 radical 7. So I can add the radicals 2 together, which gives me 11 radical 2, and I can add the radical 7s together. Negative 4 and negative 6 make negative 10 radical 7. So that's what we're going to be doing on our assignment. That's the explanation. You need to get a sheet of paper out, head it for 541, written 1 to 24. Okay, we're going to start with number 2. Copy the problem down. It's 9 radical 5 plus 4 radical 5. Since both of them have radical 5 and it's in simplest form, we can add the integers and get 13 radical 5. Problem number 4, we have 5 radical 80 minus 12 radical 5. And neither of them have the same radical, but 80 is not in simplest radical form. That's 5 radical 16 times 5. And my little hint was I probably am going to get something radical 5. So I take the square root of 16, which is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. Radical 5 minus 12 radical 5 gives me 8 radical 5. Problem number 6, I have negative 2 radical 24 minus 3 radical 6. So I'm going to try for radical 6, so that could be 4 times 6 minus 3 radical 6. The square root of 4 is 2. Take that out, so I get negative 4 radical 6 minus 3 radical 6. Negative 4 and negative 3 make negative 7 radical 6. Problem number 8, we have 3 radical 45 plus 7 radical 36. 45 is 9 times 5, and 36 is a perfect square, so it'd be 7 times 6. The square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9 radical 5 plus 42. And that's all I could do with that one. Problem number 10, it's negative 4 radical 75 plus 3 radical 147. 75 has the perfect square 25 in it, 25 times 3. And since there's a 3 there, I'm going to try dividing by 3 here. That's 3 times 49. So I found 2 perfect squares. Square root of 25 is 5, so that gives me negative 20 radical 3. The square root of 49 is 7, so that gives me 21 radical 3. Negative 20 plus 21 radical 3 gives me 1 radical 3, or just simply radical 3. Problem number 12, I have the square root of 150 minus 5 radical 96. Well, 50 has 25s in it, 6 of them. And it looks like I'm going to try for a 6. So 6 times 16 makes 96. So take out the square root of 25, which is 5 radical 6. The square root of 16 is 4, so that's negative 20 radical 6. 5 minus 20 is negative 15 radical 6. Problem number 14, negative 4 radical 2 plus 6 radical 72 minus 8 radical 32. Well, let's try for 2's. So 2 times 36 is 72, and 2 times 16 is 32. So I have negative 4 radical 2. Square root of 36 is 6, so it's 36 radical 2. And the square root of 16 is 4, so that's negative 32 radical 2. So negative 34 and negative 32 make negative 36, plus 36 gives me 0. Negative 3 radical 72 plus 6 radical 52 minus 7 times radical 128. Well, 72 is 36 times 2, and 52 is 2 times 26, and this is 2 times 64. And this could be 4 times 13, so let's try this. Square root of 36 is 6. That gives me negative 18 radical 2. Square root of 4 is 2. That's 12 radical 13. And the square root of 64 is 8. So that's negative 56 radical 2. The negative 18 and the negative 56 radical 2 I can add together, and that gives me negative 74 radical 2, and then bring down the 12 radical 13. And that's my final answer. Number 18, you have 4 times radical 112 plus 5 times 50 radical 56 minus 9 times the square root of 126. Well, I know this is 4 times 14. So let's try 4. So this is negative 9 times the square root of 4 times that's not going to work. This is 2 times 56. So that comes out 2 times 4 times 14. And within there's another 2, so that's going to be 8, be 16. So we have 2 times 56 is 2 times 8 times 7, so that's 16 times 7. So that gives us Square root of 16 is 4, is 16 radical 7. And the square root of 4 is 2, so that's 10 radical 14. And 126 is 2 times 63, which gives us the square root of 9, which is negative 27 radical 14. So we have 16 radical 7 minus 17 radical 14, 10 minus 27. In section B, we have to simplify the radicals, then subtract or add. So number 20, we have the square root of 3 minus the square root of 1/3. Since we can't leave a fraction in under the radical sign, we have the square root of 3 minus the square root of 1 over the square root of 3. So we rationalize that. And we get the square root of 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3. If we get the same denominator, 3, 1 goes into 3, 3 times radical 3 is 3 radical 3, minus 1 radical 3 over 3 gives me 2 radical 3 over 3. So again, reviewing that, first I had to rationalize the square root of 1 over the square root of 3, which gave me the square root of 3 over 3. And then in order to subtract, I had to find a common denominator, which is 3. 1 goes into 3, 3 times 3 is that. And now, since they have the same denominators, I can take 3 minus 1 and get 2 radical 3 over 3. Problem number 22, I have 2 radical 75 plus the square root of 3/16. So that's 2 radical 25 times 3 plus the square root of 3 over the square root of 16. So that comes out 10 radical 3 plus the square root of 16 is 4, so that's the square root of 3 over 4. So that I can add these together, I find the least common denominator, which is 4. 1 goes into 4 times. 4 times 10 is 40 radical 3 plus the 1 radical 3 over 4. That's understood to be 1 there. So we get 41 radical 3 over 4. And the last problem, number 24. We have the square root of 2/7 minus the square root of 7/2. So this is the square root of 2 over the square root of 7, which we'll have to rationalize by multiplying by the square root of 7 over the square root of 7. Minus the square root of 7 over the square root of 2, rationalize that, square root of 2 over the square root of 2. So that gives us the square root of 14 over 7 minus the square root of 14 over 2. Least common denominator is 14. 7 goes into 14 too, so that'd be 2 radical 14 over 14. 2 goes into 14 7, so that'd be 7 radical 14 over 14. 2 minus 7 is negative 5 radical 14 over 14. That concludes the evens. Be sure you check at the back of the book for the answers to the odds.